Hey, and welcome back to Bold and Body. It's your girl, Maddie, and I'm joined by my wonderful co-host.
Hey, it's Lena D.
Yo, it's Wesley.
And today, are you guys excited? Because we
Yes.
have a special guest.
He's special.
Yeah.
In this collab episode, yes.
I'm sorry, go ahead. You want to introduce yourself?
It's your boy, the Radical Latino. What's poppin', people?
Hey.
What's going on?
Hey.
Hi, how are y'all?
I'm good. How's everybody doing?
Good. We're so happy that you're here with us today.
We're so happy that it's not just Wesley.
No, thank you.
Oh my
I just want to start off by saying...
You ain't shit.
Just want to start off by
Say to my
saying
face.
is that thank you for having me, guys. You know, I really appreciate it. And if you guys don't know, they actually live Midtown Manhattan. This is a really, really crazy uprise. They're like really doing good for themselves. Shout out to y'all.
I don't live here.
Shout out to y'all. They got like 3 butlers and stuff.
I don't know about all that.
My ears started popping when I was in the elevator coming up here. I'm like, how high is this place?
Penthouse, baby.
They gave me a Supreme oxygen tank. I'm
Wow.
like, is that supposed to?
Yo.
Okay. No, but thank you for having me, guys.
No,
The
of
doorman
course.
almost didn't let him in. He's like, we have a quota on how many people of color are allowed in here.
That's not a joke. No, let me stop. Let me stop.
Well, that really happens in real life.
Yeah.
Not here, though, because we don't really have.
There's no doorman. Not anymore.
Yeah.
I'd like to point out, not anymore. Because in their last place, they definitely had a doorman. All right.
No, they
don't
have-
front.
no,
don't
they-
front.
They don't. But
Notice
they do
how
have,
Lena D didn't say anything. Lena D was like, I mean, yeah, we did. Wesley tried to be like, we didn't have, I mean, there was a man, he was at the door, but technically it's not a doorman.
Yeah.
All right.
He was your personal greeter.
They got 3
Right.
They got 3 butlers here, though. You know, they gave me cookies. I was like, "What the hell?" Wesley's like, "Reparations." Oh shit! I'm like, "All right, cool."
Oh, man.
Oh my gosh. But anyway, thanks so much for being here
Yeah, thank you, no
today.
problem.
And you know, we've for a long time we've been really wanting to get more into interviewing other podcasters, kind of like elevating like their message and their platform too.
Mm-hmm.
So given that this is probably one of the first time that our listeners are kind of having exposure to you, the Radical Latino, on your podcast,
Mm-hmm.
why don't you tell us a little bit more about yourself and what drove you to start your podcast?
Well, it first started from it started with my mom, to be completely honest. I'm from the Bronx, you know, BXO Day stand up.
Nacho.
BX, it looks
Sorry.
like we have a BX hater in the house.
Brooklyn, baby. Brooklyn. I'm sorry.
Anyways, no, I'm from the Bronx, and just growing up in for what they call quote unquote impoverished community, I've seen a lot of things. And what got me actually into the whole point of researching, you know, my past or just researching in general was when my mom told me, "Did you know Jesus is black?" And I'm like, "Huh?
How old were you when you found out
What?
Jesus was black?
How old was I? You want me to really tell you?
I do want to know this.
15.
Lord
15.
Jesus.
I was 15. Yep.
Lord
This
Black
whole-
Jesus.
This
I was
whole-
9.
This whole time, I was indoctrinated with that white image,
Okay.
that white image, and my mom was always telling me like, "Oh, they gotta take it down, but she never explained it why." So I'm like,
He's
"What?"
like, Mama just don't like
Yeah,
Jesus.
I was like, "What the hell?" And then she did it in her best Rica Ricardo accent. You know, Jesus Moreno. I'm like, "Huh? What are you talking about?" And she was like, "Yeah, Jesus is black." So I did my research.
Palestinian.
And I started going, and the further I went, the blacker he got. No, it's true, bro.
He's like, at first I thought he was light skinned.
Yeah, no, and then I was like, he went from being white to Dominican to
Yo.
just black. And I said, "Yo, he's a black guy." And then
Not Dominican.
then from there, I just started researching a lot more, learning that Christianity was a tool to be used amongst our people to control us, to actually have us further enslaved to the point where the white savior, you know, Jesus savior, was actually used psychologically for us to see white people as a deity. You know what I'm saying? So
Yeah.
when I started doing that, I started reading books. I started to actually educate myself, you know, go on YouTube, hearing people speak, a lot of lectures. And then from there, I started seeing a lot of confusion in the Latin community. So then I say, you know what? Time to speak out, you know?
Right.
And that's when I started my podcast and I got my name and everything. And then from there's history. You know,
Awesome.
a year went by and I'm here, you
That's
know?
dope.
So
Yeah.
That's dope.
That's dope. No, and that's the thing though, right? It's like we always grow up with all of these like ideas and like notions in the background sometimes that like aren't 100% I think embraced by like our culture because it's different. But if you're growing up in America, there's like kind of no way to avoid looking at it.
yeah.
And so what's interesting about your podcast is that when you talk about like the white savior, or you talk about like how certain things, whether it's religion or kind of like education, or whether it's like even like things that are happening in the world, and people are having sort of these conversations where it's like, hey, like that angle that something's being presented, it's always like showcasing as basically that white people can do no harm, right? And it's sort of like you've talked about the concept of white supremacy a lot on your episodes, and it's a big portion of what your message is. So I'm curious to hear like your thoughts on it, kind of like introducing how you really break down white supremacy. And then the other thing too, it's like when people are kind of naysaying what you're saying and saying that you're being like too radical in what
get
you're
trolls?
saying.
I'm sorry.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
You do.
It just popped in my head.
You should see all my death threats I get.
Ooh.
Really?
Yeah.
I thought I was bad.
No, for real. You should see if
People
you guys,
get really sensitive when you talk
if you
about
guys
stuff
go
like
through
this.
everything. Actually, I did a live yesterday, and I got 2 death threats today. So
Shit.
Oh my God.
what a morning, you know. I wake up to these type of things, but this is something that, just speaking out is something that, you know, people is saying this is the way I see it. You are speaking out on a privilege that somebody is not earned, a privilege that is just given to you just by the color of their skin. So when you rattle those cages, they're going to act out.
Right.
And guess what? There's nothing wrong with that. You know why? Because if you're given everything and everything and everything, and then someone comes out of nowhere telling you, hey, you didn't earn that. Screw yourself, you know?
Right.
And then you go through the history of why.
Right.
Then you're going to be like, no, I want to keep things the way it is. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But I focus on white supremacy a lot because that's what the whole focal point always is. White supremacy. And I go through the term that was coined by Neely Fuller because I got his book, and he breaks down everything. And then from there, he actually put it into a way where it could be, you know, digestible, you know, and understandable to the point where I'm like, okay, this makes a lot of sense.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So that's why I always focus on white supremacy. And the biggest pushback, believe it or not, are not from white people.
From
Are
Latino.
not from black people, are from Latin people. Yeah, you got it. From Latin people, my own Latin
Damn, man,
community.
you be
your own peoples.
yo.
Yo, yeah.
It's the worst.
Damn, man.
Yeah, telling me I'm a race traitor. Being
Being Latino is not a race.
This is something
however.
new. This is something new. This is something new. Which
First of all.
this is something new I just learned. Bullet lover. I did not know what that meant until.
I still don't know what that means.
Well,
That's the first time I've heard
Well,
this.
this is race 101. No,
Bullet lover. I feel like it's an
Bullet-
Urban Dictionary.
it's called bullet lover, and then I even had to tell him what. Then he goes like, "Do you know the black bullet from Super Mario Brothers?" I'm like, "Okay,
Yeah.
really?" So in other words, he called me a black lover. He yeah.
Hold on, wait. Pause.
Exactly.
That was very creative.
Yeah.
I gotta give him that much.
Yeah.
Because I would have never figured.
I read it. I didn't write it down, but I was like, huh, okay.
That was good.
Okay.
Because that's a good reference. We
Yeah.
all know the black bullet from
Yeah,
Mario is the
exactly.
one that comes out at
I
you.
was like,
They trying to
oh,
hop
okay.
over it.
Yeah, I was like, all right, that was a good one.
I gotta give them to their creativity.
But yeah, like
Whoever came up with that, kudos to you, sir. Fuck you, but kudos to you.
Yeah.
No, but yeah, like all those things that just come, all those
gotta look
people
this up.
who disagree and they want to voice their frustration, disagreement, just come at me and just tell me all this barrage of just craziness to the point where I just hit them with, okay, do you think white people see you the same way you see yourself? And that's when the conversation
It
stops.
stops. Yep.
That's when they start just splaining. That's when they go like, well, I'm like, see, if you have to go with well,
Yeah.
blah, 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 then you already know what it is.
If you have to start your sentence with an adverb, you got problems. But Yeah. like-
He took us back to like language arts 3rd grade.
Nah,
so
that
tell
means-
him about them adverbs. Let's go, Wesley.
Yeah, you can't do that. But
Yeah, but we have if we
like-
want to go with the adverb stuff, white supremacy is a verb. It's part of an action. And it's part of, you have to have power behind those type of actions. I don't want to hear, well, I can't be racist because this person thought about it. No. When you think about something, those thoughts become an action. Those action becomes a decision. Those decisions become what happens to victims of white supremacy.
right.
And then that's how people don't get, housing, money, loans, whatever, jobs, whatever they got. I don't know how they figured it out. I think they sell cocaine here. This place is nice, but
We don't sell drugs
We
here.
don't do that illegal shit.
I don't live here.
I don't live here.
It's like I am far away from this as possible. No, but those are
Y'all know I'm hood adjacent.
Hood adjacent.
I live in the hood.
Wait, this is technically hood adjacent too. So
Yeah.
Queensbridge,
Yeah.
like 2 blocks away.
That's true. I think they started smelling some Black and Mouse when I walked into the room. they were like, "Oh my god, it smells like the Bronx just walked in." No, but
You said it, not us.
I felt it. The whole point is that white supremacy encompasses everything, every action that we do
Right.
daily, regardless if we just want to sit home and not even go outside. Guess what? Our doors will get broken into, get shot up, and say, "Oops, I thought this was my apartment."
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? If some of you guys are,
Don't know who
Yeah,
he's
don't know about
referring
that
to.
story. Yeah.
Amber
Both
Geiger,
Gene.
Yep.
asshole.
look 'em up.
Anyway, but yeah,
And so, given that you have people that are literally trying to come after your life,
yeah.
what keeps you motivated, and what would you say is your biggest message to those people that are naysaying what you're saying? They're denying what their real identity is. What do you have to say to those
Well, the
people?
only thing I could say is, life experience is going to teach you,
Mhm.
Regardless if you deny it or not. Life experience is going to teach you and it's going to show you. A lot of people went through a lot of racist, encounters with whoever, depending from going to the bank to going into your car, people experience that. And
Mhm.
a lot of times those naysayers will say, well, that doesn't really mean,
Right.
well, and they start giving themselves explanations on why it happened. And that's just another form of them protecting themselves.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? But to be completely honest, those are not the people I'm trying to save or get my message through whatsoever. They already have their mind made up. It's on you. When shit goes down, don't come running back. You already chose your side. It is what it is. But what keeps me motivated is just the fact that it keeps on going. If white supremacy still exists, that's what keeps me motivated. White supremacy, I see it every day, and that's what keeps me going and going and going and going and going.
Okay. And what else would you, so for your core listeners, obviously the people that support what you're doing and, they either can relate to what the message that you're bringing to the table, or they feel that they potentially could be motivated to also do something about it. What else would you want them to know? And then what should our listeners know about you as well? Because obviously we want to introduce them to what you're talking about. So
Yeah.
what are your thoughts on that?
Well, my thoughts on that, first of all, if you're not hearing me but until today, welcome. You guys will just hear me just basically speak the truth. Somebody told me this when I started a couple of episodes after my first episode. They told me that I like your approach because you're authentic and you're raw. And I'm like, I guess. And somebody, and then somebody else just kept on saying the same thing. So my approach is basically just, getting the knowledge, what I have, and just freestyling everything and just spewing it out. Yes, I might sound like an idiot. It is what it is, but I'm surprised that it's been a year and people are still listening to me talk to myself on the mic. So I'm pretty happy with that. The main thing for my core listeners, which I always preach, is self-love and self-empowerment, especially Black empowerment. Continue on doing what those things need to be done. If it has to go to a black business and support them financially, do that. If you have to go out your way and not order from Amazon, but order the same thing from a black website, do that. Just keep on promoting black empowerment, because those economic small little gains is going to actually gain in something much bigger.
No, that's great. And I always preach that too. I was like, money is power.
Yeah.
And especially as people of color, where we put our money is very powerful.
Yep.
And we should be taking the time to do the research on what types of businesses we're supporting, what types of movies we're watching, and really just stop supporting shit that doesn't make sense to support, because sometimes you're kind of impeding development of our own communities because of like something might be easier. Like Amazon's like super easy to order from, but
I mean, that 2-day shipping, guys.
Yeah, no, it's true.
but I think it's little things like that where we have to like support each other. And part of the reason why we're really excited to have you on our podcast today is like, how can we also support other podcasters that have a message of, hey, like stay woke, get woke, do some shit about it.
Yeah.
So we're really excited to have you and are excited to dive into the topic today.
Yeah.
All right. So let's get right into it. So obviously this is a collab episode between Bold and Body and the Radical Latino.
Woo-woo.
And so of course we're going to keep it real. We're going to stay woke, but we're also going to dig deep into like the concepts that, you know, white supremacy and racism. So I know sometimes we've kind of covered it, but we're actually going to get deep into it. And so on this week's episode, we're talking about how those are intertwined, and we're going to make it fun too. And we're actually going to talk about movies and shows. So that'll be an interesting point. And also how we can stop perpetuating the toxicities that come along with white supremacy and racism too. So, Radical Latino, why don't you just take it and go into like really breaking it down for us in terms of like white supremacy, what that means, and how people should be thinking about it as it relates to racism.
All right. So before I even start off with white supremacy, let's, you know, for those sensitive people out there, let's define what white supremacy is. Does not mean all white people. I don't talk about that. White supremacy is white supremacist and non-racist white people. We got to keep the definition clear. And what the definition means, people who are classified as white, who mistreat and abuse people who are classified as non-white. That's been the working definition all along. So white supremacy encompasses 9 areas of activity within people in the areas. So one of those areas is entertainment, which goes into media, which goes into television, magazines, movies, radio, everything all around, you know, and under the sun, you know. So the main focal point that I'd like to focus on, which is white supremacy, and the person who coined white supremacy is Neely Fuller. For those who don't know who Neely Fuller is, he's a person that basically coined the term white supremacy. He wrote a book, The United Independent Compensatory Code System Concept Textbook. So that textbook basically breaks down everything what white supremacy is and how it affects us daily. And also he breaks it down in 9 areas of activity. So white supremacy in movies is supposed to encompass everything positive about white folks, everything positive about a white savior. You can't have a movie or an image of a strong black person without having a white savior to actually save the whole movie. Or it's going to have, you know, tacky parts where black folks are being either made fun of or being perpetuated in a negative way in that movie, where white people are just, you know, playing it up, you know, to have black folks, you know, feel some type of way. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. They always have to be the heroes.
Yeah. So that's what basically encompasses by. So if you guys want to give your takes on that.
So I think what I find really interesting, at least about Nelly's like book and concept, is just the fact that, like, I think most people think about racism as its own thing. And I think for the longest time, there has not been an acknowledgement that racism is still live and thriving. Mm-hmm. Like, people have always said, oh, I'm not, like, people think I'm a racist. Like, why are people still talking about racism? Like, we're past that. And the reality is that we're not past it, especially because the other flip of the coin is that racism is tightly tight with the concept of white supremacy. And so the reason why racism exists is because white supremacy exists. And you can't get rid of racism until you eradicate white supremacy. And so I think what people really need to think about is that that racism and white supremacy perpetuate injustice in society. And so when you break it down to the most fundamental elements, it's the fact that because we haven't gotten justice for those that experience racism, there's really little progress that can be had in the world. And like in America, there's a very there's history around why it's like this, but there's also history in other nations of why it's like this. And so what I would urge people to really think about is how can you as an individual challenge both racism and white supremacy and trying to find more justice for those communities that are impacted. So the victims of white supremacy. And so like, that's something that I thought was like very powerful from Nellie's work. And it's like basically in those areas of activity that you mentioned, like we all have the duty as especially those people that are more subjectable to white supremacy and subjected to racism, is that we really just need to question what is out there. And do what we can that's in our power to make sure that we're not just falling in line with what, whether it's a movie, whether it's what somebody's saying in the workplace, just trying to fall in line with like what we think might be the status quo, but there's always room for progress and there's always room for change. And so I think that's what's really important about his work, is that he's really pressing people to take ownership over their own destinies and doing something about it, not just being a victim of the white supremacy or racism. But yes, it exists, but there's also ways that we can move forward and change that dynamic. So I thought that was very powerful. And I hope that it's something that as we talk through it today, that we can help people see how they can become empowered by just having a knowledge of that concept and that philosophy.
All right. I got a question to ask, right? For all the uninitiated. So how do you exactly change that narrative as a whole?
I feel like Lena D spoke on it by saying like having that knowledge and understanding of it is the first part.
Right.
And also just understanding the breadth of it. I think a lot of people feel like the reason why you hear a lot of people oftentimes say racism and white supremacy is a thing of the past is because at this point in time, it has just been repackaged. It's not the same look anymore. It's not a group of men in white hoods like riding around and burning crosses in their front yard.
No.
That's usually the first image that comes to people's mind when they think white supremacy and racist.
Yeah,
so they're like, if there's
though.
no KKK anymore and there aren't lynchings anymore and this isn't happening anymore, then clearly it's a thing of the past. And it's like, no, it's just been repackaged.
United States Senate.
Exactly. So now we're talking about how it affects our communities, how it affects the opportunities that we, our peers, our children, our parents have. We have to look at it in terms of the prison industrial complex. So it's no longer that image that we had of it before. So if you're going to be blinded to it because it's like, oh, there's no more KKK prevalent, then it's no longer a problem. And it's like, no, what you need to understand is how it looks now, how it's been changed now, and what the impact of it. It still has the same impact of being oppressive to people. It's just no longer as blatant. And sometimes it's not as physically dangerous.
And that's the thing that we have to focus on with words. Nellie Fuller talks about words are very important. Words could get you out of things and could get you into things.
Mm-hmm.
Words are very, very important. I'm a piggyback on what she said about images. yeah, we don't see the hooded white people walking around here, talking about go back home. They turned in their hoods.
They took off the hoods.
Yeah, they turned in their hoods and put on suits.
Oh,
and now
I was thinking about the MAGA hats.
The red ones, the red hat.
They put on suits and MAGA hats, and now that's the new symbol of the KKK. White supremacy always evolves. They always play chess, and we're out here playing checkers, thinking that we're playing the same game. And we have to learn how to actually call those things out, see it, and actually learn how to either skirt it or fight it. You feel what I'm saying? So with things like that, now we have the Proud Boys. Now we have Richard Spencer's thing, which is the alt-right, the alt-light. We have to start learning little things because they go and hide within words and codes. For, I think, was it 2 years now, there was a KEK flag that was running around these white supremacist communities. And people were just thinking, hey, it's a green flag with just a little clover on the front, not knowing that this KEK flag was actually empowering white supremacy.
Yep.
A lot of people didn't know that. Now, new symbols like the OK symbol is being used as a way to basically tell other white supremacists, hey, listen,
I got you.
I'm with you. They're throwing it up in pictures in the White House to the point where people are talking in the Senate, and they're throwing up this OK symbol right behind people who are talking, So these are little things that we have to call out. And we have to really, get away from people who are naysayers who say, well, you really don't know that. That's just the OK symbol.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And again,
you haven't been on 4chan lately.
Again, we have to learn with words. We have to learn how to define what words are and how, because white supremacists are masters at words. They're masters on saying the same thing that you're calling them out on differently. Oh no, this is not it. It's just, the OK symbol. And then when you point it out, no, it's not. It's actually the white power thing. Yes, it was a joke, but now you guys indoctrinated it to your own thing. Well, you know what? You're reaching. What? You know what I'm saying? So things like that. We have to learn how to call these things out. And these are very important when we talk about images. Images is very important.
Absolutely.
And so I think part of it too, and so I like that you bring up sort of this chess versus checkers, right? And so I think even with like day to day, and as we think about entertainment and media and images, I do want to spend some time talking about like what are some shows and movie titles that actually completely flip the narrative of like what it means to empower people of color, and really they come out seeming to want to talk about and give like put the communities of color in the right light, but they're actually doing the complete opposite of it. And so like thinking about what initially people might think is the message ends up not being the message of that specific movie or entertainment, but then also the fact that where we might think that because there's a Black protagonist or a Latino or Latina protagonist that they're trying to uplift our communities, they're actually doing the complete opposite. And so there's a couple examples that we really want to dig into because it becomes crazy once you start peeling the onion of what the message of that movie really was. And so the first one is called Where Hands Touch. And so Maddie, please tell us about this fuckery. This situation.
I'm glad you said it because it's exactly what I was about to say.
Yo, man, Rue broke my heart.
We will also like to preface this whole section by saying we have not watched these movies. And right? Can we agree? None of us have watched any of these movies.
I've
I just watched
actually
the trailer.
But Rue still.
Yeah, I mean the trailer, but the actual movie or show.
No. So I've actually did watch one of the shows that we're going to talk about.
The whole thing.
Yeah.
Oh Lord. Okay.
Yeah.
Wait, are you the second one?
Yeah, the second one.
Yeah, I did it for research purposes.
Yeah.
Oh, you lying? He was just he had his popcorn and was just like, "This is good."
It's on my Netflix queue. Like, you seen this? Maybe you like. No. Only
that is how it popped up on mine also. And I was like, what the hell is this bullshit?
Yeah, I only saw 3 episodes, and I'm like, I'm done. I got real first.
Okay, we'll get to that one.
Yeah.
So that's another one. Okay, so then I'm only going to speak for this particular movie. We have not watched the whole movie.
We have not watched it. No,
we do not know how it started, and then we've only seen the trailer. But the trailer was enough for us to feel like it was very problematic. So as Lena Sadi said, the title of this movie was Where Hands Touch. It came out last year in 2018. Towards the end of the year, it was a very silent release. And you're about to find out why. So it was written and directed by Ama Asante, who, before you even try to come at anybody, I do want to say she is a Black woman from the UK. Don't get it twisted. All your skin folk ain't kinfolk. Don't forget it. She also has made 2 other historic dramas. So that's her thing. She does like historic dramas, and they tend to focus on interracial relationships developing despite racial tensions and discrimination. So that's her thing, right? And it sounds good, right?
It's not
like it's
no, like,
I like when you
life.
first hear that, it's just
Yeah.
like, okay, yeah, Black people did exist. Why weren't we represented in those spaces? Think about how many historic dramas there are with a Black person who's not a slave or a servant. So it's like what you were saying, where it's just like, oh shit, we feel like it's representation. But then let me tell you what this movie is about before you get your hopes up. So the whole premise, don't get your hopes up. The whole premise is that a young biracial girl, this is played by Amanda Stenberg. Did you say Rue? Oh, Rue. I wish I could whistle so I could do the thing.
Hunger Games.
Yes. So if you don't know who Amanda Stenberg is, she was Rue from the Hunger Games. She's been in a whole bunch of different movies. As of the most recent one was The Hate U Give, which was crazy to me because the Hate U Give came out the same year that this came out. And it's like complete opposites it's just completely opposite. So yeah, she's a biracial girl and she falls in love with a young man. Oh my God. I hate romance stories. Let me not. But she falls in love with a young man who is part of the Hitler Youth.
Okay, that's enough.
In Nazi Germany.
Stop.
And his father
Stop.
is a prominent Nazi soldier. She falls in love with a young man who is part of Hitler Youth. And I was just like,
you Black. What
the fuck? What?
So with this, just by hearing this, you guys already should know what the image that they're trying to, purvey here is,
Love conquers all.
Exactly.
Love conquers all. There is nothing that
While you're getting gas and your body burned after you've died.
Yeah. So my whole thing, honestly, when I first saw it, before they introduced the love story part of it, my initial response was, there should have been Black people in Germany at this time. Like, why hasn't there been a movie about any Black Germans? This is so true, right?
Or you never even see them in any of them.
Ever. Not like even in the background.
Like, nowhere.
There's never been I cannot think. And if there is a movie where there's Black people in Germany, y'all let me know. But I could not
Red
think.
Wings?
Who?
Red Wings? Isn't that?
No, yeah, but that's like.
That's not really.
I'm talking about Germans, though.
No.
And I'm pretty sure that there
Schindler's
were
List,
Black
maybe?
people there.
Historically, I think was it Shark Island? A bunch of Black people died during World War II because of Germans and stuff. But yeah, no, of course.
But
Schindler's List, maybe? No?
I don't remember seeing
I
any
don't
Black
recall
people
seeing
in
that.
that.
Wasn't that also in black and white? Shut up.
That's true, too.
Shut up.
What about the X-Men when he has flashbacks and being...
There's that one Black person in the background who is not a slave or a servant.
Oh, God.
Remember.
That's what I'm thinking. I'm like, no, damn.
So, like,
hard,
when
guys.
I first saw this, I was just like, oh, shit. Like, yes, tell me the story of Black people in Germany during this time.
Why?
Like, because I've never seen it.
There's curiosity around it.
Again, initially,
that's curious enough for me.
no, I'm just saying,
hearing that shit
like,
I
would have, initially, I would have liked to hear that story.
No, but there's obviously there were people like Black, whoever it is that thinks that there's a place in the world where there aren't Black people, like, I just don't think that's how it works. Like, they're there.
Well, they did invade North Africa, so it would have come from that.
But
then there still weren't even movies that depicted that.
Yeah,
that's what I'm saying. Like, whenever we have this conversation about Nazi Germany, there's never any people of color. So that's how it started to pique my interest. And I was just like, oh shit. Honestly, like I saw this trailer and I was just like, oh shit. There had to have been at least one black person there. At least one black person who was just like, nah, bruh, don't go that way. They down there. Like there had to be one. And then I saw the rest of the trailer and I was like, look at this fuckery. Because it's just like, there's scenes where it's just like, she's talking to him and she's just like, we can't be. And he's like, but I love you. All sorts of bullshit like that. But my father, your father's literally murdering Jews, but I still love you. We can be together.
She touched me. It felt something.
That means we go together now. No. That's not what that means.
I'm gonna be becoming an occurring guest.
He's like, I want to sit next to Maddie. No, but it's like we should have done the where hands touch. Our hands touched right here.
That's the picture of the episode.
No. But for real though, it could have been a good story.
Nah.
But
now when you tell me she getting in love with some,
that's what I'm saying.
No,
once it gets to that part,
right,
that's where I think most of us are lost. And there was a lot of outcry about it, and there was a lot of outrage. And it was one of those cases where she was interviewed, and she pretty much said, she's like, "But I want people to actually watch the whole movie." And it's like, nah,
no,
bruh, this is problematic.
Well, like, because it ignores the narrative. And so I know, Wesley, you were just like, no, like, it's fucked up. Like, and so what I mean by curiosity is like the fact that like our stories, and when I say our stories, I mean stories of Black people, stories of like
Brown
Latina,
people,
brown people, like those stories are often not told in the mainstream media.
I get it, but why would I put my economic, I guess, resources to something like this?
Right. No, but
That
that's
That's the whole thing that we're saying.
That's
not
I don't
this
like that.
particular story.
All right.
We're saying a story where it represents people of color in this time and place, because there is none. And the fact that this is the fuckery that we got
is bullshit.
And I think you guys, the listeners, are going to start hearing a reoccurring theme here, where I'm going to just go back to Nellie Fuller's code, is we have a relationship with white supremacists as the 3 T's. Has anybody heard what the 3 T's are?
Nah.
Please tell us.
The relationships that we have with the 3 T's between non-white people and white people are terroristic, tacky, and trashy. So if you guys break down all these movies and shows that we actually going to start discussing, you guys will actually see the trashy, the tackiness, the terroristic part of all these movies and shows and images. We can't have a positive portrayal on TV because it's dominated by white supremacy. And because of that, that's the reason we have shit like this where hands touch, and it's completely trashy, completely trashy. Regardless if we know historical facts that slave masters used to have sex with their slaves, and they used to bear their children. Love didn't take them out of slavery. You know what I'm saying? So with things like this, the message that they're trying to say is love conquers all and stuff. But look at the actions that they're doing. Look at what the narrative is underlining what they're really trying to say,
Yeah.
Right.
So I do want to say that she did come out and say, and I quote, "This wasn't a movie that was ever going to have, let's just say, a romantic ending. When people talk about it as a romance and romanticizing Nazism, that is the one thing this movie does not do. I hope that people walk away being really, really clear about the story that I have tried to tell. I hope that people walk away moved." So could it be a rush to judgment? Absolutely. But based on the representation in the trailer, it's not drawing anybody in to be like, let me give this a chance.
You're talking to the same person who watched Richard Spencer get punched in the face 20 times and laughed the whole time. So for me,
you counted?
Oh yes, I did. every time it was more glorious than the last time I saw it.
Since we haven't seen the movie, I'm gonna just assume. Let me just guess. The girl doesn't get the guy. He either dies, somebody dies, or it's some like sort of Romeo and Juliet type of thing that they can't be together because of, you know what I'm saying? Like,
I feel like that's probably what it is.
No,
you know, I feel like what it is. She died in the end.
Get out of here with that.
Or she somehow escaped or something.
But even then, it's just like, you can't ask. So there was backlash around it. And then there was like, she was interviewed about it. And then she asked people to go and like watch her movie again.
And give her a chance.
And that's like, but then again, it's, you're basically asking people who don't see a connection to the story, who don't feel like they're going to be represented in the way that they would want to be represented through the story, to support something financially. Mm-hmm. Because you're not saying, here's a free screening for everybody that feels that my movie's trash. I'm going to like prove you wrong. I'm going to show you that it's a different storyline. You're basically telling people to just go out and watch it.
Yeah.
And at the same time, supporting you economically for your project. But if this movie was actually intended to motivate the people that are criticizing her, she didn't do it. She didn't go about the right way. Yeah, and so if there was a story that she really wanted to tell and that she wanted people to actually rally behind that cause, then that should have been a part of the conversation to begin with. It should have been what was reflected in the trailer. And so it goes back to like the images of what's being portrayed in this content, is that for those of you that only see the trailer, you'll come away from it saying, well, okay, this is like, again, a white savior. Like, people need, like, basically love conquers all because a black woman fell in love with a white man, and that's enough. But like, that's not anything different from what has already been portrayed in the media before. So like, how is this different from anything else?
You guys got to remember also that this movie needed to be greenlit. So that means it had to go through numbers of people in production, in the script, in God knows every other way to marketing. And this bullshit was, okay, sure, let's go along with it. But if any one of you guys could please Google who actually wrote the script.
Oh, I'm already on it.
She wrote it.
Oh, she wrote it? Was it?
She wrote and directed it.
And also, was it co-written or co-produced?
I'm looking at the production company who decided to do this.
Because this had to be at least one person go like,
they got fired.
Damn. You know what I'm saying?
Man, Sony losing again. Out here.
It was losing. A Sony movie?
Yeah, Sony.
Notice how there was very little press about it.
Yeah, acquired the international distribution rights to the film, excluding selected territories in Europe and Australia. Y'all losing. That's why I got hacked a couple years back. Out of here. Watch some damn shit like that.
But I think it was intentional. They knew, like, this probably isn't going to rock. We're probably not going to have the kind of viewership. So that's why it was not pushed the same way here that it may have been internationally. And again, it's very easy for us to immediately think, oh, with a storyline like this, it must be, it must not be a person of color that's writing this, that's producing this, that's behind this. So we can't always make that assumption that like we're all in this together or we're the same kind of allies.
Right.
Because no, not everybody's going to think the way you do.
And we have to remember also, unfortunately, even if we have our people behind the wheel, moving, doing what they got to do and actually pushing a project along, that does not mean they have our best interests at heart.
Yeah.
For example, we have a lot of, Black and Latin politicians out here, police chiefs who decimate the community a lot worse than just regular white supremacists. Do we blame them? Yeah. But in the end of the day, we have to know what they're backed by. That's what we have to know. So this is another form of white supremacy, putting our own people in the forefront because behind the scenes, they get controlled.
Yep.
You know what I'm saying?
It's funny because I was reading this article, I think it was yesterday or the day before, where Lena Waithe had she came up and said, for anyone who don't know Lena Waithe is the comedian that's on, what's that show with Aziz Ansari?
I don't think she's even. I wouldn't characterize her as a comedian.
That's
She's
the
an
Netflix
actress.
one, right?
Yeah, the Netflix one.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
She was like the best hit, like his childhood best friend or whatever. They would hang out all the time. She was even making
She's behind The Shy. She's behind quite a few shows.
right.
and movies, yeah.
But she made like this big distinction. She was just like, well, what I don't understand is how come, all more prominent like black and brown actors don't put money behind independent films. Like she's like, if I make like $20 million, I'm at least putting like, my money behind 3 of those films. So that way they come up. And she was shouting out Ava DuVernay with her documentary.
Shout out to her.
But she was just like, there are very few of those out there. And I think she name shotted Denzel
And Will Smith.
And Will Smith. Like they don't put money behind like these independent films. And yeah. So,
But how does she know
how does she know?
where they're putting their money?
She's in there. She's in the circle of the folks.
I don't know about this. Because the one thing I
know.
never like is when
And-
people try to tell other people what to do with their money or how they're spending their money.
That I
Like
get.
you don't know if they're not giving money to these projects under different names.
Right.
Maybe they don't want to.
But she, in the article, she made like this distinction where there was a movie that came out. It was like an all black cast that was funded by Brad Pitt of all people. You're like, what? I forget what the names of the movies were, but yeah. So
Yeah, because you got to remember, this is like you said, Maddie.
I was like, did he call me Manny?
like you said, we don't know what they're gonna fund
or how
their
they
money,
give back to the
or how they
community.
give back.
Yeah.
The thing
It's true.
is, we also have to look at the history of action. We actually have to see the history of, okay, they haven't given to this, but what else are they going to
give
give to?
right?
Yeah.
True.
So we have to either see a reoccurring thing.
Because at
But
the same time, she's talking about this, but Denzel and Felicia Rashad also gave how much scholarship money that put Chadwick Boseman through school.
Right.
That put so many black actors and actresses through school.
And also,
So are we just going to
I'm
ignore
not saying
that?
that there's a discount on that, but I'm just saying that I think where she's coming from is more from like a production standpoint, like a distribution standpoint, not necessarily like, building up the next wave of actors, but actually building up the next wave of
wave.
owners. You know what I mean?
actually,
I get it. But we're
digressing. Yeah.
Going to just piggybacking off of that, for all you people who want to date white, remember,
Wait, where do we just go?
Shots fired.
but
I need you to put up like a bullet soundtrack. Boop, 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 like
who want to date white, the person under Lucas, the guy
Lucasfilms.
Lucas Films. What's that guy's name? George
Lucas.
George Lucas. He actually has a black wife. For those who don't know,
Yes.
she basically nags him to make in black films. Like he actually made a couple of black films. Like he actually donated to a lot of black colleges,
Right.
black owned businesses.
Mm-hmm.
He does a lot because his woman is behind him saying, yeah, you have to do
You
this.
do it.
So for all those who want to date white, use that white money to empower your own community. All right, that's about it.
Moving on.
I'm glad that's where that went because I got scared for a minute.
Yeah.
I was like, oh,
I was
shit,
just like,
where we
where's this
going?
gonna go? But-
See your closest white person get a knife. No.
I was like, oh man, this is the last time we do this collab. But no, that was this movie.
There's
Rand's
more.
Meat. There's so much more.
Yeah.
I know there was one in particular that you wanted to cover.
Yeah, so in that specific one, I was really surprised that the director and the writer is a woman of color, and so we like to think around using our positions, like if we're people of color in power, using our positions to empower our own communities. In this case, that as from what we've talked about, it's not what happened.
Mm-hmm.
She could urge us as much as she wants for us to go watch the movie and see if it's any different, but the narrative is there. Like there's nothing behind it that you would feel empowered to go do that it would change the outcome of the narrative and the stories that are already put out in the media. There's another interesting one called Siempre Bruja, or Always a Witch, that's on Netflix.
That bullshit.
And that bullshit, which I thought was also ridiculous, is interesting because...
So is this the one that you watched?
This is the one that I watched, and I watched it for research purposes because I was really curious to see what the storyline would end up being.
Okay, for all the uninitiated, again, I was not here when she watched these things.
He was not.
No, actually,
because I would have been pissed.
No, to be honest, the trailer doesn't tell you much. To be completely honest, the trailer doesn't tell you much except for the second trailer. It tells you at
The
least
longer
a little
trailer.
bit. But the snippets that I've seen, and I just saw the first snippet, and I'm like, somebody who travels through time? That's all I think about. So I'm like, all right, when the first episode is already fuckery.
From the very beginning. And
just to give everybody like our initial thoughts, you were just like, oh, I don't know what this is about. I saw that trailer. I saw the longer trailer. Like, you know, when you're scrolling through Netflix and then like if you stop, it plays out that whole long trailer. That's the one I saw.
Oh, nah.
And I was like, at first I got excited and I was like, oh shit, it's an Afro Latina. Let's go. This is about to be, oh no,
and then you're
not.
like, no.
Not about to be good. So I was excited for that representation. Again, we get caught up in that. And then you quickly realize, oh, this is some tomfoolery.
Yeah, again, another tacky, image that we're being exposed to.
Yeah. And go ahead, Lindy. So you also thought.
So the reason so when I saw it, I was just like, wait, come again? Like, why is this person? So wait, this person is
time traveling?
It's like she's a slave, and I get that she's a witch, and so she can time travel, which is awesome. Kudos for her and her power. But then you're using your power to go back and save like your slave owner's son who you fell in love with.
Let's keep it. So, let's get some backstory. First of all, like, in the first episode, I only saw 3 of them. I'm gonna keep it a G.
I ain't watching none of that shit. I saw the trailer and I was like, no.
I didn't even want to watch it.
And it's Spanish language, right? Like it's not like it just has like
what?
English.
Yeah, it's
again,
a Colombian.
that's why like when you first watch the trailer, you're just like, oh.
Yeah.
And I think like there's either voiceover or subtitles.
Yeah, because it was in Spanish. I started cooking mad Spanish shit. I was like, woo!
He was like, I'm about to get some
I was wilding. I was like, that's what I'm talking about. But then when I saw it, like the first episode, she's incarcerated. She's in these slave tacky clothes, and it's basically looks like a potato sack. That's basically what it looks like. What she's wearing. She's in.
They couldn't give her a belt to cinch her waist.
Nothing. Like they put her in jail, and then when she comes out of, that jail cell or whatever the case is, because she's being tried for being a witch. That's what it was. And the slave master's son, who wants to save her, gets shot, and she goes like, "Oh my god, no!" And then they burn her on the the stake.
They're burning her at the stake,
and then. And then that's when she goes 100 years, forward in time. Into the future. So you're like, wait.
What?
And then throughout that first episode, she wants to go back to save
the entire show is her going back to save this guy. The entire show. And so, but then there's like some interesting themes that come about around like
interesting themes.
Yeah,
like,
so
because it's not the way they get you is that it doesn't solely focus on that.
Exactly.
Like when the trailer starts, it's at least the long one. It's her in current day, and she's like trying to control her powers now, and like she has friends around her, and they're just like, "Oh, what's going on with you? Like you're being so weird." She's like standoffish. And then it goes into her backstory and you find out, oh, she was a slave and now she's like time jumped. So it's not just bam in your face like this is fuckery. There's a whole story that we're going to mask this fuckery with.
Yeah. And on top of that, it gets into more fuckery because somehow she stumbles into town and then goes back into her slave quarters that now is a hotel. And yes,
it's the same
nowadays,
exact place.
it's
Yeah.
the current day. Now it's a hotel, and
That's believable.
And she talks to the hotel owner saying, "I could work for free if I could stay." And where she stays is in a closet in the hotel that used to be her room in the slave quarters.
She's like, it feels like home.
True.
What?
Without getting beat.
Okay, Lena, am I making any of this up?
Nope, that's exactly how it goes.
Exactly.
And so those are the interesting themes that I'm trying to talk to.
Girl, you were so lucky you wasn't watching this near me, because if I was,
You would've turned that shit off so quick.
Turn this shit off. You might as well read a book.
Read a
I-
book.
Hell no.
Yeah, because I'm going to be reading a book as I was unpacking our apartment.
What the?
Anyway,
you're watching.
so-
That sounded really personal. That sounded like an attack. So what the fuck was I supposed to do?
Watch something else.
Lena will say she'll go into the bathroom for 3 hours and goes and just
Watching it on her phone, like,
Definitely
I have to hide this
I
from
would
him.
not do that. But anyway. But
Like, I paid
so-
for this television too. Fuck you. Netflix is under my name. What up?
You know, Netflix is actually under her name, but the Hulu's under mine.
Exactly. She's like, I'm gonna watch what I want to watch.
Yeah, the Hulu's under mine.
And then I'm gonna watch it under your profile just to
If you-
fuck with your recommendations.
if you guys want to get
I would reset.
if you
my
guys want to
whole
get
profile.
if you guys want to get a free subscription, go to Bold and Body /Netflix with Lena codes.
That does not exist.
That's not a thing. Because then when people start cursing,
It's like, wait, you guys are posting fake promo codes and stuff?
What if it worked though? That'd be funny.
Yeah, that'd be hilarious. But anyway, so like the themes around it, yeah, okay, so she goes back to live in her slave quarters. She's working for free. And she's like, there's all these themes around like, well, she's like now in current day, she's a woman and she can go to college and like she couldn't have ever done that or dreamt about doing that from where she was from. But so there's all these things that are just like, the narrative of it is just like, well,
You're so much
we really
luckier now.
couldn't have this story just be about a black woman that travels into the future. We really had to have the slave like master relationship being at the crux of everything that happened.
Definitely
in the
could have
story.
left that out.
And that didn't even need to be an element of the story at all.
And also, we have to remember, these slave masters could do anything. So hiding out, being with a slave, that makes no sense. Historically speaking, they've been with multiple people. You know, these slave masters literally slept with multiple slaves. So this whole thing about, oh, I'm in love and we're trying to run away, he didn't need to, that element of the story didn't need to, be a part of anything.
It's it was definitely one of those cases where it's just like not all white people. That was very much a not all like slave owners
she could
were
have gone
bad
just
people.
been a superhero or something.
Like-
She could have
and
just
that would have
stayed
been
in the
way
future.
better than like.
She could have just stayed in the future.
Or even if
and,
it's just like, I'm going back in time to save my family. I'm going back in time to
stop
stop
slavery.
this shit.
Yeah.
Like,
Stop
no,
slavery,
I'm going back in time
yep.
to save the man that I loved. You still gonna burn,
She could have done a
dummy.
She could have
I'm
done
sorry.
a Jax.
I'm mad.
I don't know if you guys know what that is.
What?
Okay. Oh,
Nah.
Mortal Kombat came out like a couple of weeks ago,
Oh,
right?
okay.
One of the endings for the
Mortal
black character
Kombat.
Yeah.
was going back in time and stopping slavery.
Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah, I remember that
was
now.
a huge backlash saying that, oh my God, Jax is racist now.
Nah.
You had a bunch of white people coming out saying that now Mortal Kombat Jax is racist because he wants to stop slavery.
Shut up.
That's stupid.
Yeah. No.
Like,
Yeah.
stupid.
It's insane.
And I
It's
see this.
insane.
I see this from the lady standpoint, where it's just like that also makes ladies look crazy though, because it's just like, oh well, I have all this power, but I'm gonna go back in time.
All you can
to
do it
save
is to
a
use
man.
it for a man. Like, no, like you
That
could have used
shit
it in so
is
many
cra-
other ways.
There's so many different layers to this. It's just like, I mean, wow. All right,
And so to get into that, right? So this is based on, so Netflix approached the author of the book. So this whole story is based on a book written by Isidora Chacon. She's a Costa Rican author.
Please.
I don't know what her book is exactly about because in everything, I wasn't going to read the book because I was already done with my research with looking at the movie because I had found enough of the point that I want to make is that Netflix basically got in touch with her to get ownership over her book to base the storyline of the show. And so I think it's loosely based on the book. It's not 100% based on the book.
Okay.
Which
The
one?
actual writer of the screenplay, like the actual show that made it to the screen through Netflix, his name is Bob Buchholz.
Enough.
And
Okay.
he is some white dude from Norwalk, Connecticut.
Yeah. Go
I could have
figure.
told you that.
So it's like everybody's like getting super excited about like, oh my gosh, an Afro-Latina protagonist. Like, this is great. There's like this is doing so much to tell the story that we want to tell. It's really not the story that anybody wants to tell because it was written by a man that has no idea what that story and that narrative even is.
What's his name again?
Bob Buchholz. I don't know how to pronounce his name.
He sounds like he has 2 dogs and eats mayonnaise all day. Like,
Oh,
my
wow.
God.
yeah, he does.
He's like, he was born in 1957.
Okay.
So like,
Buchholz.
there's like a lot already there.
So what about the second person?
The second
The co-writer?
person,
Is there a co-writer?
Yeah.
the second person, she's a white looking Latina. Her name is Ana Maria Parra. And so what I suspect is that she just translated it from the English version that Bob would have written into the Spanish version. So I don't think that she had any sort of like, and again, it's like, well, was there anybody on this team that could have said, hey, like, this is not the story that this audience wants to see?
This is why representation matters.
Because this
much.
is a Colombian. So the studio that ended up, producing this movie or the show is Caracol, which is a Colombian subsidiary kind of thing. Like, they're based in Colombia. And so there's been like a lot of uproar around this one too. It's just like, what's like the whole point of this movie? Because like there is this Afro-Latina lead actress, and it begs to like kind of brings into question, well, was casting just done to get attention? Because there's nothing in the storyline like that would cover anything that anybody in the audience would care to really like talk about.
I'm very interested in something. Like, we're talking about it and we're just, 4 people. But I'm interested in wondering, how did the Latin diaspora take this?
That's what I'm about to get into.
Okay, cool.
So there was a question around like, why is the concept of just like, why couldn't it just be the story around an Afro-Latina traveling in time? And so I said this before, like, why couldn't it have just been about basically her traveling through time, seeing the impact that technology has had, seeing that impact of like having access to like education and the university? Like, why wasn't there a story around that without having to have the slave owner relationship in the middle of it? So I kind of said that before. So there was a lot of like questioning around like, why is this even relevant? There was also the point of view that like she was basically like the lead actress. So her name and her role in the show is Carmen, but Carmen's blackness or her being black is just a reason to get people to watch it. And it's overlooking anything.
So it has no role in the
it has
show.
no role into the show. It was basically just tacky in terms of getting the viewership of the people that they thought it would be appealing to. But then it's just continuing the white savior master slave narrative. It's not changing the conversation that people want to be having in terms of representation in the media, or the representation of like Afro-Latinas and the story of more empowerment that they could bring if the story was tweaked to really make it more about her and her power, instead of the fact that she wanted to go save her white slave son, like, person in the story. And so it hasn't really had a positive like review from most people. They're like, well, the storyline seems okay, but then again, like, what does this mean for the, like, and these are different because there's different people that have written about it
on Twitter. It went crazy. Even on my Instagram when I posted it, I said, so Netflix has a show called Siempre Bruja, it's the same, always a witch. It's about an Afro-Latina who time travels in present day now to, go back in time and stuff. So I basically go down the whole list, and these are the comments I got. What the fuck? Shake my head. I can't even. Shrug emoji. Straight trash. And this is my favorite one. I actually liked it. Thank God I can't speak Spanish. Just leave the shit over there in the Spanish section.
It has subtitles, asshole.
It was
for real.
It's garbage. And this is just on Instagram. On Twitter, it had its own hashtag, and I was following it. And everybody, even from the Latin community, was saying, what in the fuck? But this is the crazy part. The only people who were saying that are the ones who were less melanated to more melanated. All the people who is actually for this and not seeing an issue with that, the more Anglo-looking Latin people.
Right.
Which is insane, which goes back to the image that white supremacy has done. You feel what I'm saying? So it's, I got more followers. So it's crazy.
But so it's like, and so when you ask Wesley, like, how was it perceived in like the Latino community? There really isn't one.
There was
main
no
perception
support for it, though. Overall, you can say that there was not overwhelming support for it. Then.
Yeah.
Okay.
Even from the Latin community to outside the Latin community, it was basically looked negatively. It wasn't looked as something positive whatsoever.
Or a win for representation or any of that.
No.
They tried it though. I'm gonna give them that.
Well,
because at first glance, we were all like, "Oh shit!"
Netflix should if Netflix was really so obviously Netflix only cares about getting more people to watch their shit.
Yeah,
like that's all they care about. If Netflix actually cared about promoting a different type of narrative and content,
what you mean being socially responsible?
They wouldn't have hired
quality
Bob Bolchholtz from Norwalk to write this story.
But here's devil's advocate. They're gonna say we have 13, the documentary 13. We have When You See Us, you're gonna have those type of people.
Yeah, but who worked on those?
Exactly.
Like that's the important part.
Exactly.
You have to have the same level of quality people working on these things that you expect to represent.
So don't try it.
Yeah. Like 13 wouldn't be what it is. When They See Us wouldn't be what it is. The Khalif Browder story wouldn't be what it is.
By the way, those 3 documentaries, amazing.
If you haven't watched them, watch them.
Amazing. Yes,
watch them at a point in time where you don't think you're going to have to be around white people for at least 2 days.
Yeah.
You need some time to recover from it.
At least 2 days. It is trying.
Talking about the Khalif Browder, I actually am in contact with a person that knows his brother.
Oh, really?
Oh, really?
Yeah. So just a little sneak peek. That might be a future episode.
All right.
Yeah, that'd be dope.
I actually am in contact with somebody and we're working on stuff, but I shouldn't talk that much, but yeah.
All right.
That would be dope. I'd listen to that for sure.
So that's another one where it's just like, oh man, like we really need to be taking more control of our narrative and sort of like coming up with our own content and titles that really get to the crux of the issues that we actually want to have a conversation about.
Also, I'd like to say, we know I haven't read the book, but looking at the description, the book mentions nothing about her being a slave or saving. Like that whole thing was definitely all fabricated. It doesn't seem to be having based on the book.
I was like, why are we doing this science fiction shit? Like, you going through time and then like you got to go back through time. I'm down. I like a good science fiction story. The whole time hopping. You escape.
The purpose is trash.
Escape.
Yeah.
Okay, you've escaped.
Right, but what Maddie's saying is that her being a slave and escaping is not a premise of the book.
Oh, well,
not from what I did have to use Google Translate, so it could have left something out. I'd have 2 Spanish speakers here. Can y'all tell me if that's what I can tell like this whole translation isn't perfect.
It says mofongo. Arroz con pollo.
Plátanos.
Watch Manny gonna try. She's like, ¿Dónde está la biblioteca?
But first of all, what y'all need to know is that I've been practicing my Spanish on Duolingo, so don't come for me, but check me in about a year.
You're gonna sound like Rudy Giuliani. Have you ever heard him
I also the reason why I hate trying to speak Spanish.
So weird.
He goes like translator. I got this. Like I swear to God. I'm like,
Me llamo es Maddie. Yo tengo. No, I don't sound that bad, but I can't roll my R's, which is why I ended up quitting Spanish in the first place. Because you know how stupid you sound when you can't roll your R's? You sound dumb as fuck. And I'm like,
can you
no. What y'all not going to do is make me look stupid on this podcast.
Demonstrate for us, Chewbacca.
I literally dropped an entire language course because of this. I'm not about to put myself on blast. The most I will tell y'all is I can't do that. I sound like I'm struggling. Like
That's so
It's just
funny.
like, I'm sorry, you trying to spit? What are you doing? No, I was trying to say a word. Yo, even on Duolingo, I'm like, that's not happening. Next.
I don't think Spaniards could do that, right? They have a list like espita.
Yeah.
You know?
Like, yeah. I could do that.
That's the worst accent. I can't.
Like that? You sound, man.
It's
So
weird.
moving on to the next one.
Sorry, guys.
I'm not even gonna tackle this. I'm gonna let y'all start it off. This is
Oh, you talking about LaQuisha?
geez.
I had to say it with the blackness.
Here we
LaQuisha?
Let y'all start it off. I'll go into. I'll hit in the end.
So this is a more recent one. Most
This
of
is
these
some
are
bullshit. That's what
relatively.
this
Yeah,
is.
they're all. Most of these are from either late last year or this.
Yo, why you
year.
mad?
You want to talk about it,
Wesley?
all
Wesley,
niggas.
big mad.
Do you blame him?
Fucking
Wesley came out of
bullshit.
nowhere. Just bullshit. Like you really sounded like a Chad
Yo.
who we just told you like we ran out of pale ale or something.
Yeah.
Like this is bullshit.
And I'm thirsty.
You guys ran out of avocado toast? What?
What, motherfucker?
Y'all gotta stop trying to come for avocado toast.
Avocado toast.
I mean, when they stop charging $16 for it, we can stop make funning of
Yo,
it.
y'all mad bougie. $16 for some fucking
I don't
toast.
We didn't say we paid it. We're just saying.
Oh, yeah, I did. Y'all
I
both
don't
Oh
did.
no,
for it.
I've never paid for
I've
it.
never
I
paid
make
for it.
avocado toast at home is what I say.
Ooh, y'all lying. All right, I'm gonna pull these receipts.
Shit, we about to have he might get it.
I don't know what receipts he's pulling. 'cause
We
there's
talking about
evidence.
green juice and we talking about acai bowls. We talking about that extensively.
So welcome
Anyway.
back to the hypocritical podcast.
Anyway, we already said we bougie. All right.
Yeah.
Look,
3 butlers, guys. 3.
I don't live here, guys. I'm gonna say that again. I don't live here.
She lives upstairs.
I need an oxygen tank just to breathe in there. That's how high the altitude is.
Homeboy definitely came in here. Was just like, I have another level of internet service or of cell service
I'm
I've
like,
never
what?
had before.
5G? What the hell?
Like the rest of you peasants only have 4G LTE.
I walked in here. They said, "What's up, broke boy?" Okay.
No. Okay,
Chill,
before.
Okay, so
So
talk about
this
this. I can't
movie-
even. I don't even know where to start with this one.
The movie that it was trending a few months ago, maybe it was when it was supposed to be released. The title of this movie is LaQuisha.
Oh, jeez.
And the whole premise is there's a white gentleman who is down on his luck,
He's racist.
and he's down on his luck, and he's trying to pay for his kids' tuition
Wow.
at a school, but he can't find a job, like a steady job that will pay him enough to do it. He sees an ad for a radio show. He sends in a demo. He doesn't get it. Then he hears that they're looking for women of color, and he decides he could sound like a woman of color, in particular, a black woman.
Okay, this is where Wesley puts in that snippet.
Yes. So Wesley, go now.
Fuck it.
This is what
That's
you
some bullshit,
interjected.
man.
Oh, okay, cool. So, yep, that's what happens. He decides, oh, I could be a black woman.
Oh, my God.
I could, and he decides to do an advice type show where people call in, and he's giving advice from the perspective of a black woman.
What?
But he's not just a black woman. Like I am a black woman. No.
very-
He has to make it as stereotypical and offensive to black women as possible. Starting with the name LaQuisha, because he starts off and he's like, "My name is LaQuisha."
Let's start.
Like,
Let's start with that name.
the fuck?
LaQuisha. I'm pissed off just even saying it. He couldn't just say something else.
He could have went with Keisha.
He could.
We would have been good with that.
Yeah, Keisha.
Like
he could have went
Stacy.
Ashley. He could have went.
There are black women with all of these names.
Yeah, he could have went with something way totally different.
He wanted to go as quote
If he
unquote ethnic as
If he
possible.
wanted to, even get creative, Mimi, something like that.
I worked with a Mimi. She was really nice.
Yeah, you know what I'm saying? Something, but no, he went
for
to
it.
go really, really, really ghetto.
Yes.
And not only ghetto, but he has to be stereotypical with the
Mm-hmm.
and
there are a lot
Isha,
of-
you know what I'm saying?
There are a lot of professional women out there with these unique names. And I'm not going to call them hood because I love it. I'm so here for it. If your name is LaQuisha, if your name is Keisha, if your name is any kind of
Isha.
all the Ishas, all of them.
Any sort
if there's
of like
Q's,
two names
K's,
that have been brought together.
Yes, I'm here for all of it. I love it. But, and again, there are a lot of professional women with these names that are living their best lives.
Yes.
But by saying that, having a name like that, you can only be this kind of person, is where I have a problem. Because that's essentially what he's saying. He's like, I need to sound as black as possible. So I'm going to go with Loquisha. And then the voice that he uses, the tone, the mannerisms, all of it is the most stereotypical parts of blackness. And as a black woman, I can say, I'm tired of this shit. I'm so tired of being portrayed so one-dimensionally. Black women are so complex. There's so much to us. We are not all one and the same. I'm not going to front. When I saw the name, yes, the Brooklyn came out. I was like, yeah, Loquisha. Like, when I say, it's just like, hi, it's Maddie. And I'm talking to Loquisha. Like, yes, there's that difference, but it doesn't define me and it's not limiting. But that's what this movie is. It's just like, oh, as a black woman, here's what black women have to sound like. And here's what black women have to do. And again, remember, the premise is he needs a chance and he's taking an opportunity that was meant for a woman of color. Because as a white man, he feels like he should be able to do whatever the fuck he wants. As if we haven't been living in this world all this time where white men feel like they can do whatever the fuck they want to women of color.
Say things like, I'm transracial, get box braids and say, I'm black now. You
talking about that crazy chick from Washington? Seattle?
Yes, I am.
Okay.
You talking about Dolezal?
Yeah. Yep.
First of all, what you're not going to do is act like Rachel Dolezal isn't black. Rachel Dolezal told y'all she black.
No, she not.
Okay.
She definitely
I don't know.
She straight up used the hashtag be yourself.
Okay.
And herself is black.
The fine print says, I'm telling you right now, Maddie been taking a little bit of some bath salts. So.
Y'all can't tell Rachel Dolezal nothing. Homegirl was heading up the NAACP.
Best believe.
Come on, son.
Best believe.
She blacker than half.
Best believe when she goes
I don't believe any of this.
Best believe when she goes to court for welfare fraud, she's gonna.
She take them braids out real quick.
She's gonna take them braids out. She's like, "Oh my god, I did not know."
Hi, my name is Rachel.
Exactly.
She's not gonna be like, "Yeah, my name Rachel."
Exactly.
She's gonna take all of that out.
Exactly. So,
you remember the interviews with her family, and they're just like, "We don't know what's going. We don't know why she's doing this." Like her family was lily
her
white.
Family is just like she doesn't understand what she's doing, but it's not cool.
We don't know where this came from.
This
we
is
don't
what
know
happens when someone doesn't have culture and they get a little bit of black penis. Am I going to end?
Black penis is an amazing thing. I always say that. Thank God I was already black. I didn't have to pretend.
That's probably what it is. She got a little taste and she was like, I am black.
I will say that whole, I know they say like Haitian by penetration. I hate that shit. Have y'all heard that?
I've not heard this ever.
So when
maybe
someone that are non-Haitians will say, oh, I'm Haitian by penetration because they've slept with a Haitian man. And it's just like, no.
That's not how it works.
It's not how it works.
At all.
You're still whatever the fuck you was before you had sex with that man. Like, no, you're not. Can you cook? Do you know our struggle? What year were we founded? Yeah. By who? Who led the... You don't know shit. Get the fuck out of here. Like, but okay, so only Haitians say that? Okay.
Was it Dessalines?
So look at you. Get it.
Okay. I don't
like, what are we doing here?
You know what I mean?
That was great.
1804. So.
Get him. Yes. What day? What day?
I don't know the day.
That's the easiest part.
I guess
it is.
Oh, there you go. Oh, I need the date.
January 1st, man. January 1st.
There you go. January 1st.
Super Shamu. Don't forget it.
No, but yeah, Haitians have a very unique and strong history. Without the Haitians, Latin people wouldn't even be independent.
Say it again. You don't actually have to say it again. I'm just.
I was just Latin people. Wouldn't be.
He's like, I'm not just saying this because there's a Haitian girl sitting next to me and I don't know what she might do.
I really mean this.
I am sweating actually right now.
He's like, I'm a little nervous. Not making any sudden moves.
But with this terrible movie too, like, because we were talking about images. If you
the title, the cover, yes.
The cover, yes. Where because it's literally this white man's face bursting through a black woman's face. And they make her look
overweight black woman at that.
And they
I
make her
believe.
look like she's the craziest person. Like she's just a lunatic. Like it's the worst image. And there's like this guy just like coming through it like that.
And he's smiling, looking all normal and shit. Like, oh, so we're the crazy ones.
Remember, images are very important. White supremacists like to do these little backhanded compliments. So whenever we say, hey, there's not a black woman as a model or as a lead, they're going to be like, all right, not a problem. Hey, the main person from Precious, come here. Now there's a black woman there. You know, these little small backhanded compliments. If you guys think I'm reaching, whoever saw the movie of Black Klansman,
I saw it.
I didn't see it.
I saw it.
What? I saw it 3 times.
It was really good.
It was like really good.
One of the racist,
definitely watch it.
One of the racist guys' wife, she was overweight, pudgy, overweight. Right?
Yeah.
I saw an interview with David Duke, where they interviewed him, saying how were you portrayed and all this other stuff. The first thing he said was, I didn't like the image of that white woman being portrayed as pudgy, overweight, and non-attractive. So if he is saying that,
wow,
we are not reaching whatsoever.
Yeah.
Feel what
By
I'm
being
saying?
offended when you have an overweight black woman as the caricature that you're using for a movie like this. Like, it speaks to so many people. And for anyone who tries to act like we're being sensitive or defensive by this, or not being appreciative of those opportunity, quote unquote, opportunities, like, no, because it's actually, it's undoing all of the hard work that people have actually done up till now. There are how many people that have fought for representation by giving us some bullshit representation like any of these shows and movies that we just talked about.
It's not real
because now you've made a
representation.
joke out of people's true struggles. Like I said before, I still do not know the story of people of color during Nazi Germany. There was no reason for this woman who is powerful in her own right to be going back in time to save her oppressor. We can't ignore the fact that this Loquisha movie is sitting here essentially, what's the word that I'm looking for? It's like praising this white man for taking an opportunity from an actual woman of color that already doesn't have as many opportunities, especially in a media space, as white men do.
Yep.
And then his reaction to the backlash is priceless.
I have black friends.
He's like, he's like, I have black friends. Oh, this was just supposed to be just like white chicks. Like, there was no uproar about white chicks. Like, I don't get it.
Yeah. And then even the black people that were in this other thing, the black people that were in the movie, because there were black people in this movie, they also were defensive about it. And it's just like, no, you guys are taking it wrong. That's not what it was meant to be. And we were talking about this before we started recording, where it's just like, maybe if it had come out in the time that it was meant to, it could have been smoothed over more. But as of right now, where you have more people that are aware and vocal about this kind of fuckery, no, it's not going to slide.
No. And it shouldn't.
At all.
And that's why we're talking about it, is because this isn't the representation of our people that we want or that we need in order to make progress. And so we were talking about what white supremacy is. All of these movies bring forth how white supremacy manifests itself in entertainment and how it starts to create these images that impact people psychologically. So for you, like, as a person of color, that's like, let's say you're like a little girl that's seeing these movies, you're basically saying, oh, well, I'll be okay as long as I fall in love with a white man.
Oh, geez.
Because it's going to be okay as long as I'm with a white person, because white people are our saviors, and only they can really save us, because nobody else is telling a story that's any different
You
from
make
that.
me angry right now.
Or even just to be like, it's not that bad. I feel like that's what these movies really, that's the narrative they really push. Like, oh, you're being oppressed. It's not that bad, because love is going to make it
was a long
everything
time
okay.
ago. Don't worry about it.
Yeah.
I never owned slaves.
Like,
you were never a slave. You know, stuff like that.
And it's just like-
Or the latest one is, no one's alive that is responsible for it.
Oh,
Yeah.
can't forget that one.
Everybody that's alive is still responsible for it, which is the craziness of it.
And I think is the perfect response for that is yeah, you're right, but you're still benefiting from the past.
Yep.
You're still benefiting from those trials and tribulations that black folks, built this country. Remember, America wasn't America until black folks got here.
Yep.
We built this shit for free.
No America whatsoever. There was a wilderness. That's all it was.
It was
Black
white people
folks
killing natives. That's where
in.
it was here before black folks
Exactly.
came.
Exactly. So, when we really talk about, well, you guys, were brought to America. No, there was no America. Black folks built America.
Yep.
So when they say, hey, it was not that bad, they never say that to a Jewish person. I dare someone say that to a Jewish person. It's not that bad.
If somebody just takes that statement that you made as a clip, there will be like a whole uproar. Be like, he said that the Holocaust wasn't that bad. Yeah. First of all, that's not what I said.
That's not, yeah.
But just saying that, it would be like a crazy uproar.
Man, it's going to be like, everything that Radical Latino said is not representative of me.
Yo, keep playing. That's exactly what's about to happen. The views stated by a Radical Latino are not representative of the Bold and Body cast.
And so, I mean, with these three movies, like, essentially there's one common theme that we keep seeing in these movies.
White people are awesome.
Who?
If y'all could see the way Lena D and Wesley, oh shit, I didn't even see. Just looked at me. I was just joking, guys. God.
Remember, bath salts.
But
wait until you meet my boyfriend.
That's exactly like what boyfriend?
He white. What a
Jesus. She's doing all the extra today. Anyway, but it's exactly what these movies are doing, though. It's like they're pushing people to worship whiteness.
He's from Connecticut.
He has 2 dogs and he runs in the rain.
He does.
So how do you feel about that, Maddie?
Well, he doesn't see color, so that's why we get along so well.
Oh, no.
It's great.
Get the fuck out of here.
Yo, I don't know what you just smoked.
Yo,
Maddie.
deadass. If y'all know, if I ever came with a boyfriend like that, it has to be like, yo, Maddie just got abducted by aliens.
It's like, that is not her.
This is not her. What the fuck is going on?
Where is she
really? Where's her pick? Where is any of her blackness? Be like, no, guys, none of that matters anyway. I brought potato salad. It has raisins in it. Like,
ew,
that
sounds disgusting.
And apples. Like, oh yeah. If I go, I'm gonna go all the way white.
Oh.
Like,
Is the potato salad thing really a thing?
That's
though?
a thing. They really do be putting raisins and apples and all kinds of
I have
weird
no
shit
idea
in
what
it.
that stuff is, but
Man, Kery need to chill.
Look, the fact that they use relish as an actual seasoning just says everything that I need to know about their cooking. I've never used relish in anything. Except tartar sauce? Do you use relish in tartar sauce?
hot dogs maybe. Like
I don't even put it
relish
on.
hot
I don't
dogs.
even know what
I'm just saying, like,
relish
to use it as a...
Oh.
Yeah, no.
I don't know what that is.
Exactly, because we use real seasonings. We use Maggi.
It's like
We use
chopped
sazon.
up. So relish is chopped up pickles in like a sauce thing, which I'm not quite sure what it is.
I'm not quite sure.
White people right now are screaming at their radio.
Yeah.
They're like, what do you mean you don't use relish?
They're so racist.
You don't put raisins in your potato salad? No, Karen. I don't.
I don't.
I am no interest in ever doing that.
Watch, next cookout. That's what I got. I'm bringing a white boy and some raisin potato salad.
We're gonna kick you out if it's
God, like,
if it's our barbecue. You're kicked out.
My mic is like.
Yo, your mic gave up on me.
Yeah,
Your mic's like, I'm done with this bitch. I'm sorry. Let's completely sidetracked. Woo.
But
Back to your
I mean,
point.
I think you made a really good example of how you're now worshiping whiteness, so it worked. And
That's what we're talking about.
Yes.
How that's the
yes, and so we need to find ways that this content, when it's released, that we talk about it and we challenge it and we don't support it financially. Even though I kind of financially supported it through viewership, but for research purposes. But I think
it's definitely important, like when we see these things, to call it out and to not support it.
Right.
Like, it's crazy because so many of these shows would have and movies would have like flown under the radar and been released and been perfectly fine and nobody would have ever said anything. But then we see it and it's just like, hold up, wait. This is not okay.
And you know what's true? Like another good point too that I just thought about. So the whole being under the radar. So like these haven't been under the radar because communities of color actually spotted them. They started speaking against them. But what we're also failing to kind of get into is the fact that, well, were these movies created for us to watch anyway?
We were probably not the target demographic.
We were not likely the people that they were intending for us to watch it.
I call this black struggle porn.
The fuck?
Yeah, that's how I call it. That's how I define it because we're not the ones that's supposed to be watching. I feel like the white majority who watches this get off on seeing us struggle, seeing us being portrayed in a negative light, seeing us in destitute positions, and they get off on that. And guess what?
Because it supports the narrative that they've already created for themselves.
So that's maybe we could call it something different, but that's how I call it. Because let's be honest, if this doesn't make money, they would not continue on making it.
That's true.
And it ends up making money for them anyway because they have all these other people that are watching it. And it really calls into how it supports the concept of white supremacy as well. It's because, well, white people are watching it. They're seeing that they're basically like being validated for how they feel.
Yeah.
And it's basically like the Trump effect, right? Like people are fine. Like he's actually saying what they're thinking.
What they've been thinking.
This show is actually portraying white people how they see themselves as they should be portrayed, and people of color being like, stepped on or being used as tools and pawns for the narrative and stories that they want to tell. And then if they do happen to have a person of color that ends up watching it, an element of there too is like the brainwashing effect that it could have. So it's like, oh, well, if you grow up seeing these images of white people being the savior, being the ones that are always like doing something good for the world, and then you see people of color as like always in these positions of being of the lower class or not having the power to do anything, you grow up thinking that that's what your role is in society. And then you're not going to do anything to change the status quo. And that's exactly what white supremacy is intended to do. Yeah. So in all, it's like essentially ways that they empower themselves, but we have to find ways to like empower ourselves and also love like who we are and self-love and like basically challenging when we see this. But then we also need creators that are then going to like put out content that actually tells the story as it's supposed to be told.
Absolutely.
So like 13 and like the other documentaries that we were talking about before, they're actually, written and produced and directed by content creators of color.
Right.
And like that's exactly
or allies. Because we do have to, like we said it before, there are some white people who create these stories that actually do it well. So it's like if it's someone who's actually informed and is actually referring back to those communities, then okay. But if you're going to write a story from your place of whiteness as a whatever voice you want to speak from without actually consulting that person, then you're doing a disservice to the community that you're trying to quote unquote uplift.
Right.
But if you're actually doing that research, then it's just like, all right, more power to you.
No, that's true. But it all.
We would prefer if it's actually people of color, but we're not saying, hey, white people don't touch our shit.
Right. We're just saying
do it well.
Like do it well, kind of like actually tell the right stories that are meant to be told. But I think it's also powerful to encourage like people within our own communities to tell our own stories. And if we don't see content that really reflects who we are, then we should feel empowered to create it. Exactly. Yeah. But that is today's show. So once again, thank you, Radical Latino, for being here. And we were happy to be with you as well.
Hey.
Thank you. No
this
problem.
was dope. Thank you.
All right. Bye.
Peace.
Later, Gators.
Peace.
If you want to hear more from the Radical Latino, follow him on Twitter and Instagram at the same handle, Radical_Latino_. Also, you can find his podcast on all your podcast apps and YouTube by typing in The Radical Latino.